Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Soy Marc Clusa y con mi socio Xavi Simo os invitamos a que no dejéis de ver Emprende con Neuronix. Hola, ¿qué tal amigos? Bienvenidos a Emprende con Neuronix. Ya sabéis, una producción de Zoom Barcelona. Como sabéis, vamos haciendo entrevistas a gente relevante en el sector tecnológico, innovación, empresas, inversores. Y cómo no, podía faltar tener aquí a mi gran amigo a mi mano derecha, también que me acompañará hoy y siempre, Xavi Simo, bienvenido.
Hola Marc, ¿cómo estás?
Pues la verdad que muy bien y que me hayas acompañado. Tenemos a un invitado, vamos, de lujo. Pero antes, Xavi, de presentar a nuestro invitado, cuenta para nuestros telespectadores quién es Xavi Simo. Cuéntanos.
Pues mira, Xavi Simo es el presidente de Inlea, una empresa con sede en 7 países, que nos dedicamos a ofrecer un asesoramiento 360 a todo tipo de empresas, especialmente al sector tecnológico, apoyándolos en la parte legal, apoyándolos también en la parte financiero-fiscal y sobre todo, y la tercera, y el motivo de estar hoy contigo, en la parte tecnológica, donde desde el año 2016 estamos en el mundo del blockchain y ahora también de la Web3, ofreciendo todo tipo de soluciones tecnológicas. Así que yo tengo muchas ganas de ver y escuchar a quien nos has traído hoy.
Me imagino que muchos de los que nos están escuchando y viendo ya sabrán a quién nos referimos. Tengo aquí su biografía, que es muy extensa, pero resumiendo, es un orador, es escritor, es experto, como decía muy bien Xavi, en tecnología blockchain. Por eso creemos que hoy es muy importante tenerlo aquí hoy. Es autor de muchos libros, Blockchain Revolution, coautor con su padre Don Tapscott, que por cierto tuve la oportunidad de entrevistarlo hace un par de años. Yo creo que sin más preámbulos vamos a presentar ya hoy aquí con nosotros a Emprende con Neuronix, a Alex Tapscott. Gracias Alex, es todo un placer tenerte hoy aquí. Gracias por aceptar, como no, nuestra invitación. Y sin más preámbulos, queremos preguntarte, ¿qué es lo que os motivó, tanto a Don, tu padre y a ti, a estudiar y conocer la tecnología blockchain? Cuéntanos.
Well, Alex, thank you for coming and accepting our invitation to this interview. And for starting, we wanted to start with the first question is, what was your father and your motivation to analyze and study blockchain technology?
This story begins in 2014. My dad and I were on a ski trip together and having dinner over a big steak and a bottle of wine and chatting about what we were looking at, what we were interested in. And he told me that at the time he was investigating Bitcoin. This is before the word blockchain or Web3 entered the vernacular. And he said he was looking to understand it a lot better. And that was really interesting to me because I was currently working in financial services and also looking into Bitcoin. We'd seen a few companies come through our offices that were hoping to build businesses around this new technology. And so I was becoming a bit more knowledgeable about it. And he basically recruited me then to write a research project about the emergence of Bitcoin called the Bitcoin Governance Network. And that became the first project that we collaborated on together. That led to other work that we did in this area. And all of that work eventually became this for a proposal, which we took to some publishers, and Penguin Random House was delighted by it and decided to buy the rights. It was during that research that we really figured out that this was more than a single asset. This was more than a single technology. It was a general purpose technology. It had the potential to transform more than money, but all assets in all industries as well.
Alex, hace ya 5 años del exitoso libro Blockchain Revolution y ahora escribes de nuevo el título, ¿no? Titulado, mejor dicho, Web3. ¿Qué ha ocurrido ahora desde que lo escribiste hace 5 años después? ¿O qué es lo que más te ha sorprendido? Cuéntanos.
5 years ago, Don and you wrote the book Blockchain Revolution with an incredible success. And now you are going to launch a new one in this year. But before to talk about the new one, and reviewing the last 5 years, what has surprised you the most in this technology, in this period of time?
It's a great question. And it's been a very busy past few years. I think that the big insight that we had, and it was early on in the process, was that blockchain represented nothing short of the second era of the internet. You see, for many years, we've had an internet of information, which changed how we access information, how we communicate online, how we consume content. And And those are all pretty big disruptions, but it did very little to change how we move and store and think about value online, how we think about assets. The second era of the web, what's known as Web 2, really was more of an evolution than a revolution from the first era, because ultimately we still rely on intermediaries, middlemen, to sit in the center of transactions and perform the role of a trusted third party. What's interesting about blockchain is that it removes the need for that third party and allows individuals to transact, conduct business, to organize capability peer-to-peer. And that was never possible before. So with blockchain, we're moving from an internet of information to an internet of value. And the big insight from that is that this is about more than one industry. Blockchain is a general purpose technology, as I alluded to earlier, and that it's transforming every industry. So what we've been surprised by is just how profoundly powerful the technology is to change many different industries, from finance to supply chains to even cultural industries like film and TV. And we're really just scratching the surface. It's very easy to get fixated on the early versions of how a technology operates and what kinds of role it fulfills. But ultimately, we have no idea where this is taking us.
Interesante. En septiembre sacarás tu nuevo libro sobre Web3. Así que, ¿cómo definirías tú Web3? Cuéntanos también, muy interesante.
So in September, your new book, Charting the Internet's Next Economic and Cultural Frontier, is talking about Web3. So please, how do you define Web3?
Yeah, well, my new book is called Web3, Charting the Internet's Next Economic and Cultural Frontier. And it's about the next era of the web. And I think this is important to understand what came before we understand what's happening in the future. The first era of the web, what's known as Web 1, is commonly referred to as the .com era, right? So this is the web as we knew it in the 1990s. It was pretty primitive at the time, and it was fairly static. And it was one way, so you could access information, but there was a limited amount that you could do in using it as a tool for communication and collaboration. But still, the first era of the web was disruptive and revolutionary in that it democratized access to information for those who had access to the internet, of course. During the 2000s, a couple of things changed. New technologies developed, and we also had the dot-com crash. And it sort of necessitated a new kind of web, a new, more powerful web. And that's where we got Web 2. And Web 2 built on the past with Web 1. If Web 1 is read-only, meaning you can only access information, then Web 2 is what's called read-write. And that means that you can not only access information, but you can write to the web, you can communicate on the web, you can upload your own content. And so Web 2 became known as the era of social media, of peer production, and of user-generated content. And all of this value was created from people sharing all of this data about themselves. But all of that data and all that value was captured asymmetrically by intermediaries and large platforms, because there was no way to truly express the value of digital goods, including data. Web 3 is an evolution yet again. We're now going from a read-write web to a read-write-own web. So not only can individuals use the web as a tool to access information, not only can they use the web as a way to publish content and to communicate online, but they can also own the native asset class of the digital age, data. They can own their own identities, and they can use the web as a platform to move and store and manage value. And that represents an even bigger shift in the economy than I think previous eras of the web, because assets and value is foundational to all economic activity. And I think Web3 is going to change every industry.
Alex, cuéntanos ahora, ¿qué papel, desde tu punto de vista, juega la blockchain en la Web3? Cuéntanos.
So after your definition, what role do you think blockchain technology will play in this new Web3?
Blockchains are the foundational technology of Web3, but they're not the only technology of Web3. Blockchains, for people who don't know or maybe need a refresher, are distributed ledgers of transactions that happen in a network. So instead of an intermediary like a bank or a company holding a ledger of who owns what and who owes what to whom, that ledger is owned by everyone and can be accessed by anyone. But it can't be altered unless the entire network reaches consensus. So what that means in effect is that we have a new distributed tool to move and store assets peer-to-peer and record ownership. And that's really important because if you're talking about assets, you need to know that when you sell me something online, or if I spend a dollar online, that I can't spend the same dollar twice, or you can't sell the same thing twice. And that's true not only for money, but it's true for financial assets, for identities, for in-game assets, and other kinds of virtual goods, for basically anything that requires scarcity. So for the Internet of Value to work, we need blockchains. But we need a lot more than blockchains for Web3 to work as well. We need a way to program assets, and that's where we get into smart contracts, basically agreements written in code that self-execute without the need for an intermediary enforcing the code. We need ways to improve privacy in transactions so that individuals can conduct business anonymously. And that's where there's some interesting innovations in this space. We need identity systems. We need ways for individuals to be able to custody and control their own identities so that they can move freely online holding their own assets. So all of these different technology components are key to building out a robust new internet. But without blockchains, there is no Web3.
Muy interesante. Nos acabas de contar qué papel juega la blockchain en la Web3, pero cuéntanos ahora cuál es el rol de las criptomonedas en la Web3. Cuéntanos.
Well, 5 years ago with Blockchain Revolution book, you started to mention, and one as you explained it before, the origin was the cryptocurrencies, and you were focused on that at the beginning. So 5 years later, and in this Web3 world, how do you think will be the role of the cryptocurrencies in the new economy?
Well, I think we need to take a step back from cryptocurrencies and talk about what Web3 enables. Web3 enables, among other things, a way for us to express value online, to express assets. And the native asset class for Web3 is going to be tokens. Now, tokens are not cryptocurrencies. Tokens are a general term that can describe any virtual or digital good that has value. One of the dozen or so kinds of tokens is a cryptocurrency. And by that I mean there are certain tokens that are designed to be a medium of exchange, a store of value, and a unit of account. In other words, are designed to perform the functions of money. Bitcoin is a good example of this. It may not achieve all of those things all of the time, but it is attempting to become money for the internet. But there are several other kinds of digital goods that have nothing to do with cryptocurrencies. Stable coins, for example. Stable coins are digital tokens that are backed by fiat currencies like euros and dollars. NFTs are virtual or digital collectibles that are unique and that are not replicated. Securities tokens are tokens that represent shares in companies or other kinds of financial assets. Even tokens like Ethereum. Ether is considered a cryptocurrency, but in my view, it is not. Ether is the native token of a new operating system for the web. And the more that gets built in this new operating system, the more valuable the tokens become. That doesn't mean it's money. It may be used as a medium of exchange sometimes, but it doesn't mean that it's designed as money. So we need to move beyond a cryptocurrency paradigm to a crypto asset or to a token paradigm. And once you start to think of tokens as sort of containers for value, things that can be programmed to contain anything of value, from money to titles and deeds to art or assets in a virtual world or in a video game, then we can start to break free from this hold of cryptocurrencies.
Y Alex, en los últimos años, tanto Don como tú, y en los últimos libros, nos habéis hablado de finanzas, activos digitales, supply chain. En este último libro aparece también la palabra cultura, ¿no? ¿La Web3 es una revolución cultural?
So reviewing the last books that you and Don wrote the last year, you were talking about finance, digital assets, supply chains. But now in your new book, part of the title is talking about cultural frontier. So our question now is Web3 a cultural revolution?
Yes, I think that Web3 is as much a cultural frontier as it is an economic frontier. And that's been true of past eras of the web. The internet in its early stages really transformed media more than any other industry. And Web3, despite being an asset or value-oriented web, is actually going to impact art and music and other creative industries in really profound ways. Culture needs a new business model. For too long, creators have been deprived of their fair share of the value that they create in society because we haven't had a good way to represent the value of their creations digitally. In the olden days, we did. If you were a musician, you could sell an LP or a CD and you could earn royalties. But the streaming era has put that sort of business model to an end. What Web3 allows is for us to express creative works as NFTs. And that's true for visual artists, but it's also true for musicians, for designers, for developers, video games, and other kinds of immersive experiences. NFTs are going to change culture in really important ways. I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Number one, NFTs give artists a way to monetize their creations. So for the book Web3, I interviewed a boy named Xavi, who's a 10-year-old living in the Philippines. And as part of his autism, treatment, he does art therapy. And his art therapy is quite good. And his parents started to share a little bit of his art therapy online. And this caught the attention of some creators and some collectors who saw in Xavi a really talented artist who had no way of sort of monetizing his creation. So they suggested that he sell some of his art as NFTs. That way he could earn a little bit of money, but also keep the original, which he liked to keep and was important to his treatment. In the past 2 years, Xavi has earned over $20,000 from doing this, and in so doing has secured his future treatment in a country where the government doesn't really offer much in the way of help. So that's really important. We've seen the creation of new forms of storytelling. There's a project called MV3 and another one called Shibuya, based out of the US, that are selling characters as assets in new virtual worlds and in new stories. So imagine if you were a big fan of Star Trek or Star Wars, being actually able to own a character and to travel on the journey with them, and maybe also earn a little bit of royalties and other benefits from the IP when it becomes incredibly popular. So we're starting to see this inversion of the creative model that I think is going to put creators first and is going to help them. And in the process is going to change how fans and how consumers of culture interact with creators. And I think overall, we don't know where it's all headed, but it's quite an exciting new frontier. And yeah, so in the new book, Web3, I delve deep into the cultural frontier of Web3 and reveal some pretty surprising insights.
Y Alex, para ir terminando, ya has conocido para todos, para muchos, en este presente y en este plano actual que estamos viviendo, se habla mucho de la inteligencia artificial. Queremos saber tu opinión, muy importante. ¿Qué piensas de la relación entre la blockchain y la inteligencia artificial?
So, we are arriving at the end of the conversation with you, and we wanted to finish with a topic that the last months were in all the shows, in all the meetings, and this new topic was the artificial intelligence. So, what do you think about the new relationship between blockchain and artificial intelligence?
It's a great question. And I think that people view artificial intelligence and Web3 as distinct areas, but they're not. They are the two key technologies of the second digital age. If anything, there may be a third. You could say, the Internet of Things or connected devices. And these three things together are coming as one into a thing that we call the trivergence. So the trivergence of three key new technologies. AI relies on data. You need to have lots of data in order to program large language models and other forms of generalized AI. And there's a lot of questions about how we access that data, who owns that data, whether or not that data has been shared with consent, and so forth. And these are the kinds of problems that developers of LLMs are going to have to deal with. Fortunately, we have a new technology tool set that allows us to verify data, the provenance, where it came from, the ownership, the custody, and so forth. And I think that you're going to see this convergence of blockchain and AI happen in a pretty meaningful way. So there's a couple of really interesting projects. One's called the Ocean Protocol that is looking to build decentralized network for individuals to voluntarily share data into LLMs, into large language models, and if it's proven useful, to receive some share of the compensation. And to use blockchains as a way to record ownership and record those payments so that we ensure that anybody who contributes to the system is compensated fairly. This is not going to spell the end of the era of big data. It's just going to mean the emergence of a new era of bigger and better data. And bigger and better data where we know who owns it and ensures that they get paid fairly for it. The problem with the existing web is that data exists in silos. And so all these different LLMs and different companies are trying to get their hands on the biggest silo. And that's why everyone's still pretty bullish on companies like Facebook and Google and Amazon to be able to develop their own systems, because they are sitting on their own humongous silos of data. But if we could find a way to knit this data together and ensure that all of it could be pooled in a way that the creators and the owners were actually paid fairly, we could turbocharge the growth of AI and do it in a more equitable way. And I think ultimately that should be the goal.
Alex, estaríamos aquí haciéndote muchísimas más preguntas con todo este know-how, toda esta especialización, pero no queremos robarte mucho más tiempo. Eso sí, agradecerte que hayas aceptado nuestra invitación, como no, gracias por estar aquí hoy en Emprende con Neuronix. Esperamos verte muy pronto y, como no, muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. We wanted to talk the rest of the day with you because it's an amazing and we wanted to know more examples. But we need to arrive to the end of this conversation. So thank you very much. It was an honor for us to be here. And thank you. And we hope that we can see you again in another moment.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation and your interest in the subject. And yes, I hope to speak soon when the book comes out. The book Web3 is available for pre-order now on Amazon.com if anyone's interested.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bueno, ya lo habéis visto, el gran Alex Tapscott, gran experto en tecnología blockchain, directamente de Canadá, aquí en Emprende con Neuronix, con Xavi Simo. Xavi, nos ha faltado incluso tiempo, ¿eh?
Mucho. Tendremos que hacer muchas más preguntas. Se nos ha quedado ahí en el tintero preguntarle sobre DAO, sobre identidad autónoma, pero el tiempo ha ido corriendo, así que tendrá que ser la próxima vez.
Tendrá que ser la próxima vez, y empalmo diciéndote que muy pronto nos veremos. Seguimos aquí con grandes entrevistas, tanto a inversores, empresarios, y la verdad que nos lo vamos a pasar muy bien. A vosotros sí que os digo que nos vemos en el próximo programa. No dejéis de estar al tanto a quien vamos a traer, tanto a Xavi como yo, de invitados. Recordad que esto es una producción de Zoom Barcelona, gracias también a Neuronix. Nosotros nos despedimos hasta el próximo programa. Gracias.